You're tuned into the YAAACE Time Podcast.
Welcome to the YAAACE Time Podcast, direct from YAAACE Studios here at Northfinch. I'm your co-host, Zane. I got my guy here again,
Litha.
And today we are happy and excited to have Charline from Parents of Black Children. Charline, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm Charline Grant from Parents of Black Children. I'm the Chief Advocacy Officer.
Amazing. Well, and let's jump right into it. So how did you get into advocacy work with Parents of Black Children?
So for me, it started with my children. You know, I always, for advocacy in itself, it stems from emotions. So whether you're angry or hurt, it usually drives your advocacy work. So my older son, he's now 22, was experiencing racism at school. And it started when he was in grade 2, and it continued over the years. And my husband and I, we always address every call, every time we get a note, but it just escalated over the years. So regardless of how we present ourselves and how we advocated for him, it was just relentless. His elementary school years were very, now we talk about it as he's older, traumatizing, even though we were there advocating every step of the way. And when I say grade 2, there wasn't a year except for grade 8. So grade 1 and grade 8 were the only 2 years I didn't get a phone call or a note about him. So much so, and there was different things. They tried to tell us he had a learning disability. And I remember that conversation. We listened. We took time to listen. And I was just a parent at the time. I wasn't even an advocate. Mm-hmm. And as we listened to that, what they were saying about him, the child they described, I didn't even know. Mm. And there's one thing I say to parents: you know your child. You know who you have at home. Don't let anybody educate you about your child. Right. Mm. So for us, that was important. And we looked at him and we told him, if he's in French immersion and he's getting B's and C's and you're saying he has a learning disability, as parents, we're good with that. Mm-hmm. We don't want him to be a doctor. We don't see him being a doctor. Who he's going to be, he doesn't need to be. I want my doctor to have the A's and beyond, I guess. So we're good with how he's presented himself. And to be honest with you, this was in grade 6. I said, I know this kid doesn't study. So if he's getting those marks, we're okay with it, good, yeah. Right? We're okay with it. But again, how many parents would have approached it like that? We later found out that year that we had that call, 11 other Black families had the same conversation. Wow. 10 of those removed their children from French immersion. Mm-hmm. The other parent I'm now friends with, when she pushed back because both parents were educators, that child was tested and was gifted. Mm-hmm. So think about that. Both of us, I pushed back and said, no, we're good. She pushed back and got him tested, and he was tested as gifted in both math and science. Wow. So that's what started it for us. It got worse when he got to grade 9. And he had a French teacher, he had a French teacher.
This is still in French immersion in grade 9?
Still in French immersion grade 9. We graduated with his French certificate, but still French immersion grade 9. My son, at the time anyways, he was always very confident, still is. He would walk in the school and walk around like didn't hold his head down. He knew who he was. We instill who he is as a Black boy going into a man. He knew what society, how society seems. So he had that. And I find, and I'm saying this to parents, your child, there's something about how your child walks in where the system looks at them and think they need to educate who they think that child is instead of who's in front of them. So as he got to grade 9, he made the mistake, I joke and say it's a mistake, by correcting his gym teacher, which is the French teacher, about a call that she made in flag football, American versus Canadian. She didn't like that. And she made his life a living hell. By October 15th, we had 23 incidences of anti-Black racism against him. Wow. And they weren't light. So much so, she started telling other educators in the building about him. And one of those educators, which was another gym teacher, once told his class, while my son was in the change room, go check on your stuff, because I believe he's in there stealing. Yes. My son didn't know, it's grade 9. A couple of those students told him about it the next day.
That's crazy.
And we ordered an investigation. They asked about 11 students, 11 boys. As per the school, some of the boys said they heard it. Some said they didn't. Some said, then they said, the teacher was trying to protect everybody else's stuff. I said, so who was protecting my black boy? They didn't have an answer. That for me was the final straw where I said, we have to sue the school board. And we sued the York Region District School Board. We had a landmark human rights tribunal case that went to sweeping changes across Ontario, and now I would say probably across the country. Many things happened after that. Many people told me not to do it because they would go after my child. And for me, and I'm saying this because I know parents ask this all the time, yes, reprisal is real. Retaliation is real. But what choice did I have? Whether I do or I don't, they were still going to see him as that black boy who they think he's supposed to be. So we did that. And over the years, that was in 2017 that we won that case. And while I was advocating for him, a trustee called me the N-word, referred to me as the N-parent. Is that the N-parent speaking to the media again? Yes. But when she said this to both, I always say it was kitchen table talk that somebody overheard because she said it to her friends, the chair of the board, as well as this, the director of education. Had it not been a superintendent walking by, a black woman that looks like me, hearing this, we wouldn't have known that, nobody would have known. So that in itself escalated and it became very public. A number of politicians called for her resignation, and so she did. Right? But it wasn't easy. Like, I'm skipping a lot of the gory details of it, but that's how it started for me. They hurt my baby. They brought I always joke and say they brought the fight to our door, and I had no other choice. But I will say this because this is important. Selfishly, I didn't see anyone else's children at the time. I said to my son, who was 14 at the time, I have to do this because your 6-year-old brother is coming up. I have a daughter in the middle who wasn't experiencing it the same way, because girls sometimes do experience it differently. But she was called the N-word twice at age 10. And it was devastating for her because we, again, thought we were protecting her by not telling her about the N-word. So fast forward to 2019, I got a call from now our executive director, who also does a podcast, and asked for me to do to interview me. And I did that interview. And after that, her and a group of parents, mothers, decided we're going to start a parent group. So I got the call that we're going to start a parent group, but we can't do it and we don't want to do it without you. I always say this, the only thing in life I ever wanted, and it sounds corny, was to be a parent. I wanted that more than anything else. So to be a parent group where I now was going to support other people's other children, that looks like my son, it was just a no-brainer. So that's how the call came in when we had a town hall at a library in Markham. I can't tell you the emotions I felt when I walked in that room and saw a sea of black folks. A sea of black folks, aunties, uncles, grandparents, moms, dads, like everyone was there. And I'm like, as I walked in, tears ran down my face. I didn't even expect that. I didn't know what I was walking into. But what I saw, I said, this is the picture the school board doesn't want us to see, how much we love our babies, because that's not the narrative.
Yeah.
And that from that day was when Parents of Black Children formed, and the leadership, the co-founders kind of came together. But as I was saying, selfishly, I only saw my child, and I was defending and supporting my child until one day, unexpectedly, 2 parents recognized me from my media clips and stuff, and said to one of them, hugged me, and as she hugged me, she was crying, a black mom, and she whispered in my ears, "Thank you for what you're doing for my sons." I was like, oh my gosh. So that hit me, and it hit me differently. And then a week or so later, a Muslim mom recognized me wearing her hijab with her broken English, said similar words. And I thought, in all honesty, As naive as I was at the time, I didn't even see anybody else. I saw my child. But that changed it for me, and I realized, oh my gosh, it's hitting other people. Other people are feeling the effects of it. I got to do more. That's it.
Well, it starts internally, right? It starts with your own experience, and then you discover that it's like a common experience, and something has to be done. Yeah, for sure, for sure.
And and then it goes to show, like, maybe some of those parents who are having those battles silently, and be coming across some of your content and the work that you do, they're like, I'm not alone in this.
Yes.
So I think definitely that's very, very powerful. And I think what I was going to ask was, like, in terms of racism and all this experience, how do you think racism impacts the child's development in school, emotionally, and their growth?
I'm going to say this without getting emotional, because I get asked that question a lot. But being asked that question and witnessing it on a daily basis doesn't give it justice. Every day, I get to witness the brutality of our children. And I'm not just like physically, psychologically, emotionally. It is harmful. I get to listen to the pain and the agony of parents, dads, breaking down on just the magnitude of what they're experiencing. And what you mentioned about being alone, racism, as you're experiencing it, you feel like you're alone. That's part of the power of it. But the minute you start talking, you realize you're not alone. It's never just one. Even for us, parents of Black children representing, anytime I get a call, I know there's more. They haven't reached to us yet.
Yeah.
And what I have seen over the years, and we're talking kids as young as 5 years old, trying to scratch the black off their skin. Wow. They say it. Yeah. I've heard kids say to me, I don't want to be Black because white kids don't get in trouble. We're talking 5 years old. I get to see a 9-year-old child went blind for 3 weeks. I can't make these things up. 3 weeks. His mom went to pick him up to go to school, wake him up to go to school. He couldn't see and he couldn't walk. When she went to sick kids, they first tried to call CAS on her to say she was abusing the child at home, because that's how they do it. The doctors are programmed to do that, right? And when she said, hold on a minute, there's nothing happening at home. And when she started describing the racist experience that he has had, including, he made a joke one day in front of his friends, the school that he was going to. The white kid grabbed his leg so hard, he fractured his ankle. This is at school. And when she started explaining that to the doctor said, oh, his body's reacting to the racism he's experiencing. But notice one thing, she never said, I'm going to call CAS on the school, which they can do.
Oh, really?
They can do. Really? Call the community caregiver to have them investigated, because it's emotional harm and physical harm. Yeah. Exactly. It's real, right? I've seen, I had this one 11-year-old, I believe she was paralyzed and lost hearing, paralyzed for 6 months and lost hearing in one of her ear. The occupational therapist said to the mother, her body shut down. I forgot the medical term for it. But what we have to do is get her body to start feeling safe again so she could start moving. 6 months. I've seen the amount of therapy that our children are in. We've had our children are cutting, self-harming. Even saying it on here for me is dangerous because I don't want to promote that. Yeah. But it is real. They don't know how to cope and how to maneuver in that space. So it's either they're doing the self-harm, or they're gonna just be angry all the time. And anger comes from hurt. But they don't know how to maneuver and even process what they're experiencing. And one of the things I like to say, our children's ability to withstand racism or be resilient to it, it's not a cure for institutional or systemic racism, but they're expected to.
And tying to that, I think there's that saying that I used to hear a lot going through school is, I see you all the same, I'll teach you all this, I'm going to treat you guys all the same, and I think, but then when you look back and think about it, and what is the standard of the same? and the standard the same is like the same. I'll treat you the same way I want to treat a white kid, but is that beneficial to a black child who has a totally different experience? And they have to kind of tailor themselves and be like, okay, let me be the same then, which is the majority. Right. So they kind of try and put that part of themselves aside to fit this particular box. Mm-hmm. And I think, like I look back, there's been times where I felt like, okay, like I have to act a certain way and put who I really am on the side so that I can be seen as the same, or I can fit the same, so I don't have to feel like I'm challenging other people by being who I am. Right. And when I look back at these times, I'm like, I wish I didn't do that, and
in reflection. So, you get these calls, too many of these calls, unfortunately. What happens after that? As an organization, Parents of Black Children, you get the call. What are the next steps? What do you guys do as an organization? Like, what is your role daily?
Well, we have a framework that we follow. Whether we get a phone call, whether we get an email, we have an intake. So in that intake, there's questions parents have to answer. And then we have an intake process where we follow up with the parent to hear the story or the stories. Because most times what we've seen, parents don't put everything on that intake form. It's too much. They're reliving it as they're telling it. Yeah. And right. So what we do, and from that we listen. I've been often accused, which I don't back down from, about believing our families. I do believe our families. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because oftentimes I've never had a parent experience racism for the first time and call. There's always been multiple experiences that they have tried to advocate and address themselves. And when they get shooed away or they get dismissed, that's when we hear from them. So we treat those calls as a 911 call. It's urgent. Mm-hmm. We immediately reach out to the school and set up a meeting. We don't request. We tell them we're meeting. Yeah. Because words matter. Mm-hmm. And a child is being harmed. Mm-hmm. We can't ask for your avail. Like, we need you to drop everything like we are and meet, right? So we meet. We never meet without a parent. Mm-hmm. The parents has to be there. On these meetings, whether it's in person or virtual, we get the parents to tell their story. I think it's crucial and important that the school board gets to hear the stories from the parents. Right. Sometimes the children are there, not as often. They're there to tell their stories as well, which is always different. It's just adds a different layer. And from there, the letter that we send to the school board, we talk about collaboration. We want to address the anti-Black racism. We want to deal with the accountability, but we also want to see how we could work together to resolve this. We find ourselves triaging these cases when we do the case management, and we do that. And so from these meetings, depending on the next steps, depends on what happens. We normally there's follow-up, there's investigations. So the meeting is what determines our next step. Either we're gonna call for someone's job, because if someone molested a child, they wouldn't be in their job. So why don't we expect our kids to experience racial harm from an educator and expect them still to be in their space, right? So from there, we either do that, we ask for external investigation, because what we can't have is the school board investigating themselves. There's no justice there, right? And from there, depending on the results of that, we do our own accountability. We let parents know they could file a human rights complaint against the school and the educators. Sometimes there's an Ontario College of Teachers complaint form. There's CAS we could call. And I know these are other systems that has also harmed us, but this is what is there for us, but we don't utilize them in our defense. And for me, it's creating a track record. Mm-hmm. It's creating a list of frequent flyers that we don't know if this educator did this at another school, but the Ontario College of Teachers do, if there was a complaint filed. For sure. Right? And the human rights complaints, sometimes they're civil, sometimes we have to go criminal. We had an educator assaulted a 5-year-old Black boy with autism, dragged him across the hall. So we had to call the police. Well, the school ended up doing that to have him arrested. It's real.
The school did that without your involvement?
Before we got involved, the school did that.
Okay.
It was educators came forward. But let me just say this, Black educators who witnessed it came forward.
Okay.
So representation does
Really
matter.
matters. Yeah.
It matters.
Yeah.
Matters for sure.
Wow. I don't even know what to say. Like when I think about some of the stuff that these kids go through, and I think one story that sticks to my mind, and I think that's also the story when I first learned about your organization as well, was what happened in Kitchener. I think about a year ago or 2 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
where I think a 4-year, like there was a principal that called police on a 4-year-old child because they were acting violent. But there was a statement,
Yes.
and like I try and imagine how that would be like as a 4-year-old. Police are being called upon you because you're acting violent. I'm trying to think, a 4-year-old acting violent. How violent can a 4-year-old be to a point where they have to call the
That's
police?
excessive.
Yeah. That story is not an isolated story. It happens to our children a lot. It's just who decides to go public or not. This was in Waterloo. But let me just say this. Prior to that story in Waterloo, there was a teacher who taped, or I don't know if it's duct tape, what it was, children to her desk, a Black child and a Muslim child that was fired for that. So with this little boy that they call the police, and he's 4 years old, saying that he's violent, what does that mean? Because one of the things I always ask, give me the definition, give me examples, because we don't ask that. Because what is it about the child that makes the child violent? Is it the skin color? Like, that child is one of 3. He's a triplet.
Oh. Okay.
He's the middle child.
Mm-hmm.
The stories that came out afterwards, when we met with the school board, in that case, we went with the community. We got the call about them calling the police. But let's just say this: when they called the police, when the police came and saw the 4-year-old, he didn't know what to do. That was an unprecedented phone call for him. He called the supervisor. I think, because I'm remembering the story now, they went home first. They drove by the house and realized there was someone at home so they could take the child home. So that's how the child ended up going home. But what happened? The child didn't want to go with the police. The police walked with the child to a room, and the child came back, and the child was different. The child was calm. For me, I always think, what happened? What did the police say to the child when nobody was there?
Yeah.
Right? Like, we know what happened when we're alone with police. I'm speaking to the choir here. We know what happens. So here's a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
The child was calm. The police could have left him there, but they took him home. The school board, the principal got instruction from our superintendent to call the police. They see our children as violent regardless.
It's a threat. Yeah.
We can't change the color of our skin, and it's our skin that's violent to them, right? This child has been locked away. I call it segregated, isolated many times in a room by himself. At 4 years old. Remember, 4 years old, 2021. He just came out of COVID.
Yeah.
So this child was a COVID baby for the last however many years alone at home, and all he had was his sibling. The first day on the school bus, they separate, just the egregiousness of what they did to this child. The first day of school, they separate him from his siblings. Remember, he's the middle child. He's been isolated in rooms many times. There was one, they kicked him off the school bus. And then they would send the school bus to his house to pick up his 2 siblings. He would stay by the window and cry all day and wouldn't eat. What are you doing to that child? These are deliberate, intentional behavior from adults. But let me just tell you some of the things that child is displaying and what his other siblings are displaying. Because we don't just help parents and then we go away. We get to hear the aftermath. That child now at a new school, like the therapy that they're going through, the entire family, including the siblings, probably will be there for a while, because now the other siblings are remembering some of the things that happened because they weren't able to articulate that story at 4, but they're drawing it. Every time he sees a taxi, like the old Beck cabs, he grabs his mom's legs and say, the police are coming to get me. Because he equated. His brother would, which is the younger one, would started drawing pictures of his brother being behind bars, because that's what the police represent for them. They at the new school, they were taking the little boy. This wasn't even an isolated situation. And when he saw the room, because he was the first to get to the room, he goes, no, I'll be good. I don't want to go in the room. Because he's realizing that room represent him being isolated. Like, think about solitary confinement and what that does to the mind. And we did that to a 4-year-old. And this director of education couldn't find it within ourselves to call and denounce that. So we had to call for her job. And so we did. Because to me, it tells me you're inept. You don't see yourself in that 4-year-old child.
Right.
Because you would have never done that to anyone else that looks like you. So that's that story for that family. And they're still going through it because it doesn't go away. It's real.
Yeah.
I know this is heavy.
It is. It is. But we were expecting it. This is
okay.
We knew. You've been here before and explained to all of us some of the work that you do, which is why we really wanted to have you on here. So I got a question here. In an ideal world, what changes do you feel are still necessary to ensure that everything that you've accomplished so far isn't just a checkbox for the board or for the ministry, just to brush this one under the table and keep it moving? Like, what can you do to make sure that these things stick and hopefully don't affect another 4-year-old in the way that one was affected?
You know, there's a lot to be done, but laws has to be passed to make hate crime illegal. And not just, it has to be, the definition of that has to be explicit and be detailed, because oftentimes when our parents go and report a hate crime or a hate motivated incident, the intake officer doesn't even understand it. Yeah. They're not used to seeing us as victims. So when we go in and say we were a victim of X, Y, and Z, there's a pushback.
Right.
So the laws has to be passed. The Ministry of Education has to do a better job in holding boards and leaders accountable. One of the things that we advocated for and we won, in a sense, is the amendment to the Ontario College of Teachers professional misconduct to include discrimination and anti-Black racism and racism as a professional misconduct. But here is the things that happen to us all the time. We advocate, we march, we protest. They tell us, yeah, we're going to do it. We were supposed to get a draft of that to make sure our voice, what we see it, because we are on the front line all the time, is part of that. We didn't get that. What we got was the amended version. And in the amended version, they amended it in 2021, I believe it was, that they amended it. But here's what it says. The language is weak in it. It's very weak. Right. But what it does say also that I find extremely upsetting is that the school, if an educator committed a professional misconduct under this amendment, the school board or the leaders may report to the Ontario College of Teachers. May. So therefore, right? Like, think of like the language is important.
For sure.
So we have educators who are dropping the N-word. And they're not being reported. My Xavier and I were on a call, and a principal dropped the N-word in one of our meetings, in an N-word meeting. We were in that meeting. We were supporting a family, and she dropped the N-word. And I'm usually quick on the draw. I'll be very honest with you, but I waited to see if anyone was going to address this.
You just let it slip.
And I said, "I'm sorry. Are we all going to like? I couldn't take. Maybe I was quick." again. I said, are we going to pretend like we didn't hear her drop the N-word?
Mm-hmm.
And then that's when everybody started shifting. And then she tried to apologize. Like, I don't do that type of apology. I'm sorry, what? Because I don't hear them dropping the F word that easily on a call or anywhere in front of their boss or bosses. And her boss were on the call. To this day, they never reported her to the Ontario College of Teachers. Wow. So for me, you ask about that, but there's so much to be done. It's like the layers, like just keep peeling back the layers and layers and layers. And for me, if changing or addressing or disrupting it, we're attacking power.
Mm-hmm.
We're attacking those who sit at the table. And I always call it the ivory tower. And nobody wants to give up that power. So therefore, because if they do, we had COVID recently. And there was a crisis approach to COVID and to that pandemic because white lives were in danger. Mm. Being Black is like living in a pandemic because you're always under attack. Mm-hmm. When are they going to attack and address and treat it as a crisis with all our Black bodies being harmed on a daily basis? And we're talking our most vulnerable, and we're talking in schools. And this is just, I'm talking about schools. We haven't even touched on the child welfare system or the criminal justice system. Right? So there's a lot for us to deal with. I don't know if we're going to deal with it all in our lifetime because they have to want to.
For sure.
It talks about a willingness for politicians who would create laws to want to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you touched on it a little earlier too, the having to use the systems that are there, but it is a chance to create a track record, and hopefully eventually hold them accountable for what's happening in these schools.
Yeah, no, I think like you also mentioned that we're just talking on one department where there's so many of them, and I can only imagine that like as Black parents, like what do you do? Like, do you spend 3 hours a week trying to understand these different systems? Because you don't know what might happen when your kid goes to school and on their way back, right? So how can parents be better equipped? Like what advice can you give them where also understanding they have a busy schedule being a parent, or also going out working to put the food on the table, and what can they do to also protect their child from all these institutions that potentially make them vulnerable?
It's a lot to ask parents to maneuver that system. It's a lot to learn, but not knowing is where the school has power.
Yeah.
Because when you know how to maneuver. So one of the things I say to parents a lot, all the time, believe your child. Every day, I know life is busy. And, that's not it for all parents. Like a lot of parents are very active, but believe your child, ask your child about their day. Because sometimes the child, depending on the age appropriate, the child might not know how to describe the racism that they experience, right? Yeah. So that's also important. But you got to be honest with your child as well. Be honest with your child in this, in the way that when they experience racism, do not describe it away. Tell them it's racism. Tell them when they come home and they say, I raise my hand and I never get called upon. It is racist behavior because they're not used to. This is not just Charline words. Studies have been done to show that when Black children raise their hands to answer a question, they're not the first to be called upon. It's a way of making us feel less than, and to marginalize us and separate. Like, let your child know age appropriately what exactly they're feeling. I would say as much as you might think because believe it or not, a lot of the families that we help a lot of educators who their children are in the system and they know the system. We help a lot of, I would probably call them professionals in a sense in their field, but they still do not understand the system the way they should. And even if you do understand it, it's best to go with support. It's best to go with advocacy. When you go with an advocate, what it does, it's level that playing field. The power now shifts. We're balancing that room because it's not just parent against a superintendent, a director of education, a teacher, a vice principal. Now you're going with support. So they know you're not alone, you have community. And that is important, that they know you're not alone. As far as advice for families, when they categorize your child, ask them for a definition and real examples. Meaning when you said it earlier, when you said, I treat them like everybody else. Actions don't always match words. We're not like everyone else. We were the only people on this planet that was enslaved for hundreds of years. We're not like everyone else. We should always be separated and be treated as, our experience is unique and different. And when your child comes home and first you get a call from an educator, listen to them. They're gonna call you before you're trying to speak to your child. But so let me get back to you. They know when they call Black parents, they know we're strict, and they know we're gonna hold our children accountable.
Right.
But listen to your child. This is not a time, because I know parents get embarrassed because you're making the phone calls. And I could say this because that was me. I'm forever trying to forgive myself for the times that they call and I didn't believe. And I believe them first. So have that conversation with your child. If your child gets suspended, the day that the suspension happens, make sure you get a letter for that suspension. Because in that, there's timelines for the appeal. A lot of times families go home, they don't get that suspension letter. They get it days later, weeks later, because they mail it, and you end up missing it. You end up missing that appeal process on purpose. Know that the Education Act, there's so many things in the Education Act that even when, as parents of Black children, we raise, the people in front of us don't even know. Because we are the ones that have been harmed, we're forced to know our rights. So, for example, it was amended that if your child identifies as Black or racialized under the Progressive Discipline Act, that's in the Education Act, suspension should not be the first disciplinary action on the table. Most of our families don't know that. And that's crucial, because you think, and the reason why it was amended to address that is because of the alarming rates in which Black students, it actually says Black boys were being suspended and expelled. That changes that child's trajectory.
For sure.
And they know this.
For sure.
And that thing, one of the things I like to say to educators, don't educate who you think my child is. Educate the child in front of you, because we're all different. There is so many things I could say about advice and even even support for your child. Your child has needs. I know a lot of our families are given an independent education plan, IEP, for behavior. That should never happen in kindergarten or grade 1. They're growing. But if your child does have one, because we've seen this too, it's for academics, sometimes it's not even being followed. And know that you could take them to court. Know that that is your right, your fundamental right. There's lots of groups out there that would do a human rights complaint for you for free. You could do it yourself for free online.
Right. Do you guys have lawyers in-house, or do you work with any particular firms that do this work regularly?
We partner with the Black Legal Action Center to do all our human rights complaints. With Black, they could do it on their own, depending on they used to have a income minimum. But with our partnership, we're able to eliminate that, because personally, I don't believe if you experience racism, you should have to pay out of pocket to fight it. Absolutely. Personally, that's just me.
Makes sense.
Right? It could be Oprah, or you could be homeless. I don't think that should be something that you'd have to pay for.
Right.
We also have partnered with a couple of law firms, lawyers, who are about this work, who would work on contingency. So when we have civil matter, we let them handle our civil cases.
This is available only in Toronto or
all over.
Wow,
because a lot of these lawyers, they are licensed in other provinces, and they could do that. You talk about all over. Like, we don't only service families in Ontario. It's all across Canada. It's all across Canada. We've had families from the U.S. We have a couple of chapters in the U.S. And now we're about to form one in the U.K. And not because we went and seek these people. They found us.
They saw you, yeah.
And when, it doesn't matter where our children are. If they're in school, they're facing racism.
Yeah.
They're facing racism. So.
Yeah. And yeah, I think I also saw it on your website where it says, I think you said the systems are not neutral.
Oh, systems are not neutral. Come on, the system. One of the things I always like to challenge the school boards on is the Education Act. When that was formed, no one that looked like me was at that table. I could tell you that. So it's not about reforming it; it's about recreating it with an equity lens, an equitable lens. The policies that they have when they call me in and they like to quote policies to me. And the cool questions I ask: when was it created? When was it amended? When it was it amended with equity? Or was it, and who was it, when it was created, who was it created to protect and who was it created to oppress?
Right.
And I know, because we were in Toronto, TDSB, one of their favorite one to quote is when something happens, we're sending the child home pending an investigation up to 20 days. That policy in itself is racist.
Isn't that like suspension?
But here's why, because you automatically assume the child is guilty.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And know that when they suspend your child, they're supposed to set the child up for success at home. What we're also seeing in the Education Act is what's called exclusion. They're not calling it suspension, but they could call it exclusion, which means the principal has the sole discretion to exclude your child from school based on what they perceive to be danger to that school. That's how you giving one person in a society that is rooted in anti-Black racism sole discretion to send home a child. I did commercial real estate, and that's one of the things the landlord can't have sole discretion
Right.
to arbitrarily make decisions.
We give checks in place, checks and balances.
There you go.
For sure.
Holy.
Sure. Well, I mean, we've unpacked a lot here today, and we really appreciate you coming by, Charline. Look into parents of Black children. Look into the organization. Tell parents that you know about this organization. They have a lot of information on their website. How can people get in touch with either you or with the organization other than just on the website? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
So we're on Twitter, we are on Instagram, POBC.org, I think it's called. I don't really know our Instagram.
We'll put them on the screen.
Please, thank you. But I will say on our website, www.parentsofblackchildren.org. For my personal email, I mean, it's there on the website as well, but you could reach me at charline.grant@parentsofblackchildren.org. We're happy to hear from everyone. To date, since 2020, September 2020, we have over 560 cases or families that we have helped. It's just one organization.
Yeah, and so much
and
more.
I say that, and that's only people who know about us.
Right.
We haven't even hit communities that I know. If I live in Vaughan and I'm facing this, you imagine if I live somewhere else and certain communities.
Yeah.
So when I get those calls, and actually it's funny because this year alone, this September, I've been getting a lot of those calls from communities because I sometimes I know the schools, and they ask for the intersection, right? And I already know what's happening. I know in certain communities, they treat the family based on who they think they are in that community.
Right.
That in itself causes problematic. One of the stories that stood out to me, child with autism, 5 years old, or leaving from kindergarten to grade 1. This I have never heard, and this is so against everything the school board Speaks on our Education Act, legal, whatever you want to call it, did not give the child a report card, did not give the child at graduation. And principal has to sign off on it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that mom, until she got heard from us, she said, now they're rolling out the red carpet. You cannot, as a parent, and I cannot say this enough, you cannot fight the system on your own. And you shouldn't, because the system has power. The system has the teachers have their unions. The principal has the principal council. They have their lawyers. And here's what we're seeing from a POBC lens. Unions, principal council are now hiring Black lawyers. Lawyers that I know are about this work and have done this work, but they're hiring them on their staff. So when they respond to our complaint or claims, it's a Black lawyer. It's a Black lawyer that's responding, so we can call it racist. But that's how ignorant and stupid they are. Because racism is not about who is committing the act, it's who the act is being committed. The act is being impacted.
Right.
So it's not about who's doing it, it's who's feeling it. So even though the person might be Black in that system, it's the system itself that is so poisonous. So even well-intended individuals could get caught up and do racist things. It doesn't mean that they themselves are racist, but it's like saying the police force and this Black police officer and they can't be racist. They're the one that beat them up. Yeah, we know that. Yeah, they are, because they're following a culture. And the culture is racist.
And if they don't follow that culture, then they're not following the policies.
Yeah, they're
not doing their job,
and they themselves are now attacked. Just think of the playground bullying. If you weren't there with the bully, and you don't call out that bully, and you don't say anything, or if you say something, the bully turns on you. So what does everybody do? Let's not say nothing.
Yeah.
Or let's just join with the bully to protect themselves.
Right.
So.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
Do you have anything else?
No, just not right now. Not right now. I would just like to ask, if there's anything else that you'd like the community to know, information you'd like to share, a new policy that was passed maybe that the community doesn't know about, maybe there's a place in the community that's giving jerk chicken for free so we could know about. I'm joking.
No, that's okay. It's all good. I will say, at Parents of Black Children, we offer free tutoring. We rarely do programs because we know programs alone won't solve the systemic racism. But we offer tutoring.
So the free tutoring is in a particular neighborhood?
You could do it online.
Oh, okay.
You could do it online. It's there. I'll say take advantage of it, because every year we have an event. And we give out school supplies and stuff. And as leaders and parents of Black children, we can take advantage of it, but I would hate to see those go on claim. Every year we do scholarships. Last year we issued, the first year I think we did 1 or 2. Last year we did 5 or 6.
Nice.
So it's beautiful to get that. I would say sign up for our newsletter, because we do mentorship, we do workshops. And I want to say to you, those workshops, it's valuable information that you're getting. It's the secret about the education system sometimes that parents might not know they could do. I'll give 2 quick ones. One, at any time you could go and ask to see your child OSR. And anything in there that you don't like, you could have it removed.
Sorry, OSR?
The Ontario Student Record. Thank you for letting me clear that up. Ontario Student Record, you could have things removed, and you could put positive things in there about your child, what you want the reader, because the reader could be anybody. Also know, if you believe there are information about your child or about you, you could do a freedom of information. It's $5 it will cost you, and you could ask to see anything on your child or your name, because sometimes the parents' names are in there, on the server that the school board has. It stays with the school board for 10 years, stays with the ministry for 55 years.
Wow.
You could do that with the school boards, you could do that with police, you could do that with systems.
Right.
But it's important that families know that. And for my high school students, I want to say this, and high school parents, exam review day, please go. Exam review day, they don't tell you this, they don't promote this. It's a day that as a parent and as a student in high school, you get to review your exam. But it's also a day that you get to speak to your teacher or the principal, and you could have your marks change. I say that to you because I know our people don't know this.
Yeah.
I know Black families don't know this. It could be a difference between a 59, and 59 they should be running it up, but they don't. It could make a difference between your GPA if you want to go on to post-secondary,
Right.
and you should go, because let me tell you, other communities are going. Sometimes they show up with their lawyers. They're not asking for 1 or 2 marks. Sometimes they're asking for a lot more. But it's that opportunity, and those are the secret sauce that we sometimes miss out on.
Yeah.
So this is better than jerk chicken.
Way better.
Yeah.
This is better than jerk
Way
chicken
better.
because this could make a difference in that child's life. And for all the parents, I gotta say this to my parents that says, I want my child to earn their marks. Know this. There are times when your child do well, and when those marks are subjective or objective, they're not getting the marks that they deserve. So do it. And for all the athletes out there, this makes a huge difference for you, because if you're planning on playing in the US, because I know we're at YAAACE, I want to touch on that.
Yes.
Your grade 9 course matters. And, ask for help. And the school board should provide you with that help.
Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah, it's way better than jerk chicken. I have to add that extra sauce over there too.
Gems, thank you so much, Charline.
It's my pleasure.
We appreciate you coming out and giving us all this knowledge. It's been another episode of the YAAACE Time Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Stick with us. We got a lot more coming up.